Okay, this is page 2 of your review. So on this page you are going to graph two lines. You're going to figure out where these lines intersect or find the point of intersection. So in this first example, you'll notice that the equations are already set up for you to graph. Remember, they're all in this form y equals mx plus b. Okay, so in order to graph it, we need to have this y by itself with no negative or no number next to it. Okay, and in this case, for letter A, they are set up that way, so we can just go ahead and graph them. So we need to figure out, first of all, what's the slope, what's the starting point for both of them. Okay, so remember the slope comes from the first number, so that's -2. And remember, like before, I told you put the slope over 1, okay, if it's just a whole number. Okay, and then the starting point is the second number, so -6. Okay, and again, it's the same here. This time it's 1/4. It's actually a fraction, so we'll just write it that way. And then the starting point here is 3. Okay, so now let's name this equation 1 and this equation 2. Let's start with equation 1, and the starting point is -6. So on the y-axis, I need to find -6, and that's below, so I go down -6, and there's my first point. Now the slope is -2/1. If it's negative, like I told you earlier, that means I go down into the right one. So down 2, and the bottom number is 1, so right 1. And then down 2, right 1. Now that's not enough points to make an accurate line. So what we need to do is continue this line going up the other way. So to go backwards, instead of going down 2, I go up and then left. Up 2, left 1. Up 2, left 1. Up 2, left 1. And just continue until you run out of space. Okay, now I can connect those dots and make a line. And again, use a ruler so you can get a more accurate line. Because obviously that one's not very good. Alright, so now for the second line, for equation 2, I'm going to start with 3. Okay, so that's above the line. You'll remember, you always start with the b, the second number. And now the slope says up 1, because it's +1, so I go up, and then the bottom number says right. It says over 4, so I go up 1, then over 4. Up 1, over 4. Okay, and I can't go any further, so now I'm going to go back the other way. So down 1, and over 4. Down 1, over 4. Okay, and now I can connect the dots. Okay, and there's our point of intersection. Okay, and to get to that point, or to figure out what that point is, I start in the middle, and I go over 4 to the left. Remember, if I go left, then that's negative for x, and I have to go up 2, so +2. Okay, so my answer I put here is -4 and 2. Okay, so now for the second one, if you notice, they're not set up like this easy y equals mx plus b. You have 5x on this side, or an x term on the left side. So what we have to do first is we actually have to solve this for y so that we can graph it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the equations to the side. So there's not a ton of room on this page, so what I'm going to do is bring this one up here. So I have some room. So 5x minus y equals 5. Okay, now what I want to do is get this y isolated and want it by itself. So I need to get rid of the 5x. And usually if the x term is on the side, you just have to get rid of it by either adding or subtracting. It's positive, so minus 5x. Minus 5x over here. So then all I have left on the left side is -y. Remember, it's negative, be careful. Remember, if there's a negative there, carry it over. Now I cannot do 5 minus 5 because these are different terms. They're not like terms. So all I can do is just rewrite both the terms here. Now you always write the x term first, because we want this mx plus b form, and the x term goes first. Then 5 is positive, so +5. And now I need to get rid of this negative. So in order to get rid of the negative, I'm going to divide by, remember that this is a 1 here, so -1. So I divide -1, divide -1, divide -1. All the terms you need to divide. That cancels out. Then y equals, okay, well -5 over -1 is +5. x, then positive 5 over negative 1 is minus 5. Okay, so there's equation, oops, sorry. Okay, so we'll label that as equation 1. Alright, and now let's go over and solve the other equation. So now this one, I have negative x, so this time I'm going to add x to both sides. So bring down the y term. It's negative, so bring down the negative. Okay, and then again, write the x term first. And remember, you can't add or subtract them because they're not like terms. Now this time, if you notice, these are all two steps. I add or subtract the x and then I divide. Okay, this is a negative 2, so I divide negative 2 all the way across. That cancels out. Now, you're wondering, what number do I divide by negative 2? Well, remember the number in front of x is actually 1. And I can't do 1 divided by 2, so I'm just going to leave it as a fraction. It's going to be 1 over 2, but it's a positive divided by negative, so I make it negative. So negative x, negative 1/2 x, and then negative 12 divided by negative 2 is positive 6. Okay, and that's my equation 2. So let's write those over here on the right together. So we have y equals 5x minus 5, and then y equals negative 1/2 x plus 6. Okay, now let's start with equation 1. Now remember that again, the starting point is the second number, so that's where we start, negative 5. So we go down to 5. And I'm going to write out these slopes. Remember, this slope here is 5 over 1. I just put it over 1. And this one's already a fraction, so I don't have to change that. So for the first one, I go up 5 from negative 5, and then right 1. Up 5, right 1. Up 5, right 1. And then I want to go back the other way. So I go down 5 and left 1. Just go backwards. And then again, connect your dots. And don't forget arrows in the end, because these lines keep on going forever, so that lets us know it keeps going. Okay, now the next one, I'm going to start at 6. Okay, so positive 6, so up here. And then the slope is negative 1 over 2. So that means I go down 1, right 2. So if it's negative, we go down. And then the bottom number is 2, so I go over 2. And again, keep going. So down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. And I want to go back up the other way, so instead of going down, I go up 1, and then left 2. Up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2. Just go backwards. And then, again, connect those dots together. Arrows on the ends. Circle the point of intersection. And it's right there at 2 and 5. So 2 and 5, and I'm going to write my answer here as well. Oops. Okay. Okay, now the third one. Okay, again, now this one, it looks like I'm only going to have to solve equation 1, because this is already in equation, the equation form we can use to graph. So we'll talk about equation 2 in a second. First, let's figure out this one here. And so I just need to find somewhere with room. Okay, and actually I'll do that over here on the right. So let's bring it over here. 6x minus 2y equals negative 16. All right. Now again, we want that x term to go away, so we subtract it. Subtract it both sides. That goes away, and then I still have negative 2y here, and then negative 6x. Okay, remember this x term always goes first, and don't do 16 minus 6, because they're not the same, or not like terms. And then we need to get rid of the negative 2 by dividing it. So divide negative 2 for all the numbers, all the terms. That one cancels out. We have y equals negative 6 divided by negative 2 is positive 3. And negative 16 divided by negative 2 is positive 8. So there's equation 1. Okay, now our equation 2 is already solved. It's x equals minus 3. Now let's talk about x equals minus 3. what you notice is this time there's no y in this equation. So if you get an equation that's just x equals a number, this is going to be a line that goes straight up and down. It doesn't go up into the right, and it doesn't go down into the right. It does neither of those. So this one goes straight up and down, and then it crosses the x-axis at -3. So what it's going to look like is I go over to -3 on the x-axis, and the reason I do the x-axis and not the y-axis is because it's x equals, okay? And then I simply just make a line that goes straight up and straight back down. Okay, now let's say you get one that says y equals, let's say 5. This line is going to go straight across, a horizontal line. And this one doesn't have x. So what this does is it crosses the y-axis at 5. So if it's equal to y, it crosses y. If it's equal to x, it crosses the x-axis. Okay, and it would cross here at 5. Okay, and it would go that way. So that's not what we're doing. Okay, so now we're going to graph the first equation. All right, I just graphed the second one, so let's go to the first one. We start at 8. Okay, and now it says to go, the slope here is 3 over 1. So that means we would have to go up 3 and right 1. However, there's no room to go up 3. We go off the graph. But what we can do is just go backwards then. So we'll go, instead of up 3 and right 1, we'll go down 3 and left 1. Down 3, left 1. Down 3, left 1. And there's our point of intersection right there. Down 3, left 1, and continue all the way through. Okay, and then make your line. Okay, and there it is. Our point is at, to the left 3, so -3, and then down 1, so -1. So -3 and -1. Okay? Okay, let's go on to number 4. Okay, so now what we're doing is solving an equation. So remember, this is a fraction form, or actually it's called a rational. Okay, so what we want to do is get rid of the denominator by multiplying by 5. Remember, we've got to multiply both sides. And what happens here is I don't multiply this times this. I don't do 5 times 7 and 5 times 2, x. Because what happens when I multiply the 5 is that they cancel. They go away. So I don't even have a 5 anymore. All I have now is the 7 minus 2x equals -3 times 5, which is -15. And now I just solve it like a regular equation, kind of like this one over here on the right. So now I want x by itself on this side, so I'm not going to add 2x because I want the 2x to stay here. So I'm going to get rid of the 7. 7 is positive, so I subtract it from both sides. That one cancels. Then I bring down the -2x, and then I have two numbers that are the same sign. If they're the same sign, you add them. 15 plus 7 is 22, and they're both negative, so they stay negative. And if you're having trouble with your negatives and adding, just do this on a calculator, please, so you don't make that mistake. -15 minus 7. Okay, and now I need to get rid of that 2 to get x by itself. So I divide it. Divide -2. X equals -22 divided by -2 is positive 11. Okay, and that's all you have to do is solve for x here. Okay, because there's no other term we're looking for, not y. Okay, now this one is just like the second step of this problem. This was the first step, and this is the second step, this is the third step. This one is almost like this same problem, but just starting with the second step. So again, here I'll subtract 9, and -x, and then I have these two numbers here, -13 minus 9, it's going to be -22 again. But now, there's a negative in front of x, and it's actually not just negative, but -1. So I need to divide -1. So remember, we don't want anything next to the letter, or the variable. So now -22 divided by -1 is positive 22. Okay? And then for the last problem, again, this goes back to that first page where I had two numbers on one side of the equal sign. And whenever I get this, I always like to draw a line, keep myself organized. If I have two numbers on one side, two numbers on the other, I always like to have x on the left and my number on the right. Okay, so on this side, I want the x term to stay. So I want 4 to stay, I want 6 to go. 6 is positive, so I subtract it, and then when I go over here to do the same, so I'm going to subtract it from the term that's like it, that doesn't have x, so that cancels. Then I just have negative 4x equals 2 minus 6, which is negative 4, and then I bring down the negative 5x. Now on this side, I already took away from the left, remember you have to go over to the right now. This side, I want the number to stay. The number in this case is negative 4, so I need this x term to cancel out. So I'm going to write it underneath. And this time the x term is negative, so I add it. So that means I'm going to add it to this side as well. Okay, so now negative 4 plus 5 is positive 1. And then I bring down the negative 4. And now if this is just a 1, well then I can just take it out and x equals negative 4. Because that's what we're trying to get to, is just a 1 in front of the x. And once you do that, you can just remove it because we don't need it. Okay? That's page 2. Go to the next video for page 3.